Remember me. Laughing while he does
it. My mother was a very secretive and private woman.
2019. Damn, just what a year. I mean, the end of a decade. And my squirrel brain didn't realize it's the end of the decade, but then I did the math. Yeah, wow. I really cannot believe the decade is almost over. And 2020, it's just around the corner mostly. So this decade's been a really interesting decade for movies, and this year has been an interesting year for film. And I wanted to count off my 15 favorite movies of 2019. So, before we do that, I wanted to get out of the way the honorable mentions. So, here they are. First of all, before we begin the list, I made a mistake. It's not 15, it's my top 14 favorite movies of 2019. But whatever. Mistakes happen, and we just move on, I guess. So, all those movies I liked. I definitely liked them. A lot of them I liked more than I thought I would. But, however, I did not think they were the best, and I feel like a lot of people are going to use some of those movies to say they'll be in their best of list. So, without further ado, here are my 14 favorite movies of 2019. Number 14, Crawl. Alright, so at number 13, we have Piercing.
I have an appointment tonight.
The girl you made your appointment with will be at your room in an hour.
Thank you.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
No.
What's the nastiest thing you've ever done?
So, Piercing is from another director, Nicholas Pesce? I'm going, again, here's another director credit. So this is a movie that I'm pretty sure not a lot of people heard of. I mean, at the time, I'd never heard of it, and until I saw the trailer, I didn't even know that this was based off some sort of cult classic novel. So, this movie is really, really, really good. And it is very stylish. There is just this feeling, like this Tim Burton feeling to this movie. This movie looks like if 90s Tim Burton decided to direct a Italian giallo film. That is this movie. And that is the best way to go into this movie. I would recommend, if you were to watch a trailer for this movie, I don't know how the Green Band trailer of this movie is, but I would recommend watching the Red Band trailer, because you just know just little bits and pieces of about this movie's about. It doesn't give you any of the details or anything of what you're going to see in this movie. Any of the imagery, any of the dialogue. It does not give you any of that.
It's adorable, Faith. I just want to hit you.
a sudden.
I want you to wear my skin.
What?
So that's the best way to go into this movie, is really just blind. Not knowing the source material, not like really using a lot of references. Just go into this movie blind. It is just a surreal and darkly funny movie that starts off as the premise is like a twisted version of a rom-com from the 80s. I honestly don't watch rom-coms, so I mean, if you guys do, then you probably will know this. Like, the story is a husband mostly just says, oh, I'm gonna go on this business trip, and what happens is he just ends up meeting up with a hooker mostly. And at least from what I know about 80s rom-coms, there's a lot of them that are kind of like that, and it plays it like it's a rom-com, but then there's a twist, and the trailers give this away. The twist is the husband's actually a up-and-coming serial killer. So he's like, there's a whole montage in the beginning where he's getting himself prepared to how he's gonna execute this murder. And like I said, there's a dark sense of humor to this movie. There is a genuinely dark sense of humor, and it's just a really, really good movie. And it's not even that long. It's only an hour and a half long. It's not that long of a movie, so it's just a really entertaining movie from start to finish. I would say it's completely original. There's a lot of, I have not seen a lot of other movies that are like this. So, Piercing, that was a really, really big surprise. Alright, so, coming up at number 12, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
In the book.
We've got to stop it.
I have read so many, like, just hate reviews for this movie. Like, so many people were like, I don't know if it's trying to be funny or what, and no one remembers. And I think, and I will say this, I won't blame you if you don't remember this, but the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books were meant for children. And so when people were saying, oh, there's like a whole bunch of humor and stuff in this movie, and I wasn't going along for it, that's how I was kind of just thinking, so this person probably did not grow up with the actual books, because if you actually read the stories, let's just say you read the stories, and I don't know how you can do this, but somehow you were able to not look at the illustrations that came with each story. They're not that scary or creepy. I mean, there's some generally good stories in there, but there's a lot of them that are just like, okay, yeah, without this image, the story is just really kind of but with the image, it makes it scarier. And not a lot of people know that, or even just remember that, at least from these reviews. So, I was really baffled at the hate this movie was getting, and when I went into this movie, I was like, before the movie began, I was just contemplating, how is this movie gonna play out? Is it gonna be really, really horrible, or is something gonna happen that's gonna make me like this movie? And guess what? It came in number 12 on my favorites list, so I generally really like this movie. This movie, I would say, is one of the more underrated movies of 2019. Because not a lot of people seem to have really liked it. Critically, it got a lot of critical praise. But from audience members, it seemed like it was kind of mixed, and I didn't think it deserved it because I was thinking, you know what? As a big fan of the 3 books, this genuinely is a great adaptation of those 3 books, and not just an adaptation, which it loosely is, but it's a great representation of these books, because it's like, I mean, I'll say this, in this entire movie, there's only one creature that they actually kind of get accurately right when they were making, like, the costumes and trying to bring the illustrations to life. Because, I mean, if you look at, let's say, Harold, the Scarecrow, if you look at what he looks like in the movie versus the image you're given in the book, they kind of look a little different, but I would say this is still the closest thing I think we could ask for a live action scary stories to tell in the dark movie. This movie actually felt genuinely ambitious. When I was watching this movie, I did not feel like there was some sort of unambitious, money-hungry bone in this entire movie. There was not one angle in this movie that I felt like, oh, they're just throwing it out there so people would want to see it, or they're just throwing it out there and it doesn't need to be there. This movie doesn't need to be here. I was not thinking that. I was actually thinking the opposite. This movie is a very ambitious movie. You could tell that everyone working on this movie has and really loves these books. So they're trying to give this movie, or I should say they're trying to make this movie the best representation for these books as they possibly can. And because there was a lot of weird hatred from audience members with this movie, and I'm gonna be honest, I truly didn't understand it. That's actually one thing I was like, I don't understand the hatred for this, because I honestly felt that this was a good representation for scary stories to tell in the dark. And I just felt like it was a good movie. And for a PG-13 horror movie, it actually gets pretty violent and intense in a lot of these sequences where creatures are chasing these main characters through like a police station or a cornfield. There was a lot of times where it gets intense, and I was not expecting that from a PG-13 horror movie where people were saying, oh, it's scary stories to tell in the darks, but with lulls. And I was just like, which I actually read that. That was a title of a review, I believe either from IMDb or BlooddyDisgusting.com. That is not true, but okay, I guess that's how they saw it. Whatever. Anyway, this movie, honestly, I feel like it deserves a little more praise, and I would say that critics from Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic are the only ones giving this movie the praise I actually think it deserves, because honestly, when I heard the premise for this movie, I wasn't sure how they would handle it, because how I pictured a Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie would be like an anthology rather than the type of movie they chose. But I felt like they did this so well. They handled this material so well that this is probably the best representation for this series I could ask for. And again, it's a genuinely entertaining, heartfelt movie. It's ambitious, it's pretty cool, and I like that finally we're getting, like, not just practical effects, because I always appreciate some good practical effects, but makeup and costume effects for these creatures, rather than something made of CGI, which there is one creature where there is CGI, but I will say this: not the entire creature is not CGI. It's just one scene that this thing is in that's CGI. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie, and I feel like a lot of people should give it a little more praise. Alright, now on to the next one. Alright, so now coming in at number 11, Ready or Not.
I can't believe that in half an hour, I will be a part of the Ladomus Gaming Dynasty Empire.
Dominion. We prefer Dominion.
2010, or the 2010s, I should say. At least for me, because I know there's a lot of comedies that a lot of people like that came from this decade. For me, this was the worst decade for comedies. I don't know if it's millennial humor or what, but it doesn't work for me. And to me, I don't find it funny. I just kind of find it really, really annoying. And so there are only a few actual comedies that generally made me laugh. And Ready or Not is definitely one of them. This is a horror comedy, and I feel like it definitely delivered in both aspects, the comedy aspect and the horror aspect. This movie, I feel like, was actually a pretty genius movie.
Oh, Jesus, you shot the maid.
Does she look like she's wearing a giant white wedding dress, Emily?
Holy shit!
I had to play along so that I can get you out.
It's insane.
They think they have to kill you before sunrise.
Really good. It was really a generally good movie. There are a lot of times where I felt like it was just funny. Like, there's some times where there's a jump scare that's actually pretty funny, and I know that was intentional because of the situation they're put in, or who causes the jump scare. I know it's supposed to be intentional, so it actually is really just really funny and hilarious. And the dialogue and how this movie is written is definitely just snappy, and I could tell that they know, whoever wrote this movie knows how comedy works and isn't trying to do everything that every other comedy has been doing this past decade. So this movie was generally a delight, and like I said, it's a funny ass movie. It truly is a funny movie, and there's a lot of times where there are many scenes that get really intense, and overall, like, there's a lot of things in this movie that make it really, really good. It is one of the best movies I've seen this entire year, and I feel like there's a lot of movies that deserve that praise, and yet this one happens to get it from me. I put it at number 11, and this was difficult because I wanted to put this higher, but I mean, like I said before, this list, I'm not going to, I like all these movies mostly. All these movies I love. I absolutely adore all these movies, and I think that's the thing that has to qualify if I'm going to put movies on this list, is I have to really, really like them, rather than, oh, I liked it, but I don't mind watching it only the one time. It's like, no, I want to watch these movies multiple times. I love these movies. So I'm just reminding you guys. So I would totally give Ready or Not a chance. It's a genuinely funny movie, and if you know horror movies, like if you are a somewhat horror movie aficionado, you will totally dig the hell out of Ready or Not. So coming in at number 10, we've got Knives Out.
Harlan started out with a Rusty Smith Corona and built himself into one of the best-selling mystery writers of all time.
Wow, this movie, speaking of really, really, really funny movies, this movie is one of the wittiest and pretty, like, one of the coolest movies I've seen in a while. And that's interesting because there's absolutely no special effects in this movie. So the fact that this movie could be so damn cool and fun to watch, and there's like little to no effects in this entire movie, that to me is not just baffling, but all around interesting. And this movie is, just like Ready or Not, this movie is genuinely a funny movie. This is a really, really funny movie. And it's just a witty ass movie. Hell, last night, I actually saw this movie again for the second time. And this movie, it is really, really funny. The performances in this movie are spectacular. The writing in this movie is definitely, it's a good, whoever wrote this movie is a great writer, especially when it comes to trying to make people laugh, because comedy is one of the hardest things to really write. So this movie is really one of the funniest movies of the decade. And I think that's one of the things I could actually praise 2018, I could praise these years for, is giving at least me some pretty genuinely funny movies, because I like comedies, but the 2010s has been a really, really dull year for comedies, at least for me. So to have a movie that actually generally makes me laugh and makes me want to rewatch it is just a delight to me. And this movie definitely hit the mark when it came to that. This is definitely a good movie, and I think it gets the praise it deserves. A lot of people are saying it's the best comedy of the year. No one, I could see where people came from that. You're gonna see that higher on this list is another comedy that I think was funnier, but I still generally felt this movie was really funny. It was a funny movie. And actually, I kind of wasn't, it kept me guessing. It's a completely original movie. Like, it's not that predictable. So, I mean, there are a lot of times where I was feeling like, you know what? I know who the killer is, but I still was kind of guessing, because in the movie will just swing your expectations out the window mostly, and it's just a good movie. It's a good movie, and this is one thing that you can tell it's a good movie, is that the movie is 2.5 hours. But when I was sitting there, I did not feel, I felt like it was only 80 minutes. It didn't feel like it was 2.5 hours. So I think when a movie does that, there's something to be said about the movie. When a movie is so entertaining that it could be a 3.5 hour movie and it can feel like an hour and a half, that tells you this is a good movie. So, Knives Out, truly one of the best movies of the year. Definitely, by far, one of the best movies of 2019. Alright, so coming in at number 9, Ford versus Ferrari.
Carroll Shelby, maybe? Lee Iacocca, Ford Motor.
So, I was in California for a little bit. We went to the movies to see this the last night before me and my parents came home. And talk about another movie that was just really entertaining. This movie was really just an entertaining ass movie. And that's the thing. I'm usually not a person who's into things like NASCAR and racing, yet I was so invested in this movie. It's just a good movie, and I feel like it looks like a Michael Mann movie. Like, it looks really cool, and the cinematography looks really good. I mean, and then you find out that, oh, Michael Mann produced this movie. Okay, so that makes a little more sense. But this movie is a genuinely good movie. It's a good movie. It's a heartfelt movie. And it definitely shows you not just the complications and the dangers of racing, but also just why people do it. Like the thrill people get out of it. And this is a good movie. I feel like this is the best movie to represent racing, like race car racing, whatever. I feel like this is the best movie to represent that, because it definitely shows why people watch it. This movie definitely shows all of that and more, and it's just a good movie. So, Ford vs. Ferrari, I didn't have a lot to say about it, but I still genuinely actually really like this movie, so give it a watch. Alright, so coming in at number 8, John Wick 3.
You have no idea what's coming.
Mr. Wick broke the rules.
John Wick 3. Of course, it's a John Wick movie. Of course it's gonna be good. But, and don't get me wrong, I love John Wick 1 and I loved John Wick 2. I feel like this is the best John Wick movie. This movie, from start to finish, was one of the best movie-going experiences I've had, and it's just a damn good movie. I mean, this movie was an entertaining movie, and I just like the interesting ways that John Wick will just kill somebody. Either if it's with a book, or just like breaking knife holding cases and you throwing a bunch of knives at people. This is just an awesome, badass action movie. And I mean, I think it's predictable that somebody would put John Wick 3 at their top, like, best of the year list, but man, I just couldn't help myself. I had to talk about John Wick 3. A good movie. It is genuinely a good movie. So, I mean, you probably already seen it, but if you haven't, if you're for some reason having doubts, watch John Wick 3. It's a good movie. And if you, for some reason, you've been living under a rock and you haven't seen the other John Wick movies, watch them. What are you doing? So, John Wick 3. Really awesome movie. Alright. So, for number 7, The Lighthouse.
What made your last keeper leave?
He believed that there was some enchantment in the light. Went mad, he did.
Tall tales.
The Lighthouse. This movie is really good. This is a movie that it's a slow burn horror movie, and it is effective. I won't say it's scary, but it is a pretty good movie. It's a funny movie as well, which is kind of weird, but it's a generally good movie. Robert Pattinson is becoming one of my favorite actors in this past decade. I mean, he's one of those guys who decided after Twilight he wanted to actually start trying to be a good actor in actually generally good movies. And I mean, before recording this video, me and my dad watched another movie that he's in called Good Time, and that movie was fucking good. That movie was really good. This movie's really good too. This is a genuinely good movie. It's an atmospheric movie too, and it's such a cool aesthetic like the black and white, grainy look of the movie, the sound design of the movie, and I mean the fact that they built a lighthouse from scratch. I mean, this movie is so cool. It's a cool movie, and there's a lot of cool visuals in this movie. Robert Eggers, who already won me over when he made his movie The Witch, which I think this is a better movie. I mean, I like The Witch. I really generally like The Witch. This movie I felt like was better. But he already won me over with that movie. And I was just like Ari Aster. To me, he is becoming one of the best horror directors of the past decade. And that's such a good sign, because we need a lot of good horror directors, because the horror genre is a generally cool genre, but we gotta have more than just Blumhouse to represent this genre. So I'm glad we're getting Robert Eggers and Ari Aster. I'm glad we're getting these directors to just start making generally scary movies. Like this movie, while it's not horrifying or it's a haunting movie, I should say. It's a very haunting, suspenseful movie. But this movie gives you new ideas and new imagery that a lot of horror movies don't give you. And I just love that. I genuinely love that. And I just really love this movie. And I love that Robert Eggers is making horror movies about myths, about folklore, and mostly just horror fantasy movies. That's what The Lighthouse and The Witch, that's what they are. They're horror fantasy movies. And I like that. It kind of reminds me of Guillermo del Toro with movies like Pan's Labyrinth. It reminds me of that. And I am absolutely giddy at the thought of a movie like this existing, and me actually able to go see this movie in the theater. I can't wait for his Nosferatu remake, honestly. Like, when I heard he wanted to make his own version of Nosferatu, I was totally on board. I was totally just giddy, and I cannot wait for that version. So, The Lighthouse is a generally good movie. You guys should really watch it. So, we are almost done. Now, after this one, we got my top 5. These are the movies that I absolutely adored more than any other movie in this entire year, on this entire list. So, let's go off and go ahead by starting with number 6, Joker.
For my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed. But I do.
Oh, where to begin with this movie? So, I love this movie. I generally loved this movie. I liked seeing a gritty, Taxi Driver-esque psychological thriller in theaters again. We don't get this type of psychological thriller anymore. And it's actually a genre that there's not that many movies that are part of this genre. So I generally liked seeing one again in the big screen, based on one of the most iconic comic book villains out there. This is actually a really good movie, which I did not expect, because I was like, it might be a comic book movie, I don't know. Then I saw the trailer and I was like, this is still DC? And then yeah, it's a DC Joker origin movie. And it's pretty good. It's a good movie. This is actually a genuinely scary movie. And I don't think this is a horror movie at all. And this is a genuinely haunting, scary movie. A haunting look at mental illness. And I don't think I've seen a better depiction of mental illness on the big screen in a while. And I just gotta praise Joker for finally kind of just forcing people to accept reality that mental illness is a thing that sucks. It sucks, and you know that's why there's a lot of people that are like that who see the world in this way. And I feel like Todd Phillips definitely was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance. I want people to see the reality of this. And I like that. And not only that, it's a haunting and scary ass depiction of mental illness. And there are some times where the movie was funny because of Joker. But overall, this was a dark and grim movie, and I was not expecting that because Joker is a genuinely funny villain. So I was not expecting a movie about him to be so dark and grim. This movie, I feel like, was just really, really, really good. Joaquin Phoenix did an excellent performance. And I just have a feeling that he's probably going to be nominated for Best Actor when the Oscars premiere or whatever. This was just a generally good movie. And again, if you haven't seen this movie already, watch it. Go watch it. It's a good movie. So I generally recommend Joker. So now we have my final top 5 movies of 2019. These 5 movies were the 5 movies that I feel like made 2019 for me. These 5 movies, there's no beating them. At least for me. There's no other movies that could blow these other movies away. So these are my final top 5 favorite movies of 2019. Alright, so let's start off at number 5. Uncut Gems.
Is it too late? I'm done. It means nothing. It meant nothing. Please. Give me another shot.
This movie, it's a movie with Adam Sandler. And I feel like now Adam Sandler is becoming just like Robert Pattinson, where he is actually wanting to star in actually good movies and wants to show that he can be a very, very good actor. This is one of those movies. He is brilliant in this movie. And this movie is an all-around entertaining ass movie. This is a generally good movie. It's such a cool look at, I would say, greed. Like, and I know there's a lot of movies like this that deal with gambling and that deal with like gangster mafia type situations that are about greed. But I don't think there's any of them that portray it in such a way that this movie does. Like, it portrays greed kind of like, almost like a drug, where at first it looks and sounds very appealing. Almost, what's the word? Almost, I want to say polished, but I know that's not the term for it. Commercialized, I guess, I should say. It looks kind of like that. But then, the more and more you keep indulging in it, the more and more, like, your life just starts going to hell. And I feel like that, there's no other movie that represents greed in such a way that Uncut Gems does. This is a movie. This is Oh my god. So this is a pretty good movie. There's a lot of funny things in this movie. There's a lot of intense shit in this movie. And all around, this is just an entertaining and sometimes weird movie that when I saw it in the theater, I did not regret it. It is a genuinely good movie. This is one of the best movies I've seen. And I've saw it recently. I saw it last night. So this is one of the best movies. I think this is a great movie to end 2019 on. Like, end it on a high note for movies, not on a low note with Cats. Don't end it with Cats. No, end it with Uncut Gems. A movie that I know of right now isn't playing in a lot of theaters, but I think should be playing in a lot of theaters, a lot more theaters than it actually is. This movie should be seen. This is a movie that it should be seen. And it's produced by Martin Scorsese. There's not another better reason to see this movie. A gangster movie that deals with greed, produced by Martin Scorsese. There's no better reason to go out and see this movie. It's a generally good movie. It's not just a good movie. Again, it's a funny movie, which was good. I want to see Adam Sandler be funny and not saying jokes that are really stupid in a dumb-ass fake voice. I want to see him actually be genuinely funny. A genuinely funny actor. That's what I want to see Adam Sandler be. And I feel like this movie could be his comeback. Because again, before this movie, I mean, if you see a movie with Adam Sandler's name on it, it's like, that movie probably is gonna be really stupid or horrible. But this movie is not horrible. This movie is not stupid. This is a good movie. And it's just a really entertaining movie. It's a gorgeous looking movie. The cinematography in this movie is really, really cool. And the soundtrack for this movie, I actually really like the soundtrack of this movie. And it's weird because the soundtrack is mostly just weird ambient music mostly throughout this movie, but it's really cool, and it has this really 80s exploitation movie vibe to it, and it's just really, really cool and really, really good. Uncut Gems, I highly recommend it. So on my number 4 spot for this video, I've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
We get into a fight, I accidentally kill you, I go to jail.
Anybody accidentally kills anybody in a fight, they go to jail. It's called manslaughter.
Speaking of really good movies, really stylish, funny, and just all around good movies, Quentin Tarantino, say what you want about him in real life, but behind the camera, get the man behind the camera and get him writing a script, and he is a master of his class. And this movie definitely proves him. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a really, not just badass, but just really genuinely fun, entertaining look at what's considered the golden age of Hollywood, to see how it was back then in the 60s, and just to see what it was like living back then. And it's just this movie does it so much justice. This movie definitely does the 60s so much justice. It is a really cool movie. It's a badass movie as well. And again, it's a 2.5 hour long movie. It didn't really feel 2.5 hours. So, I mean, it's just an entertaining ass movie. I enjoyed sitting there in the theater watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is a good movie. I feel like this movie's gonna be on most people's top list, but I mean, there's good reason for that. It's a good movie, and Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt give really stellar performances, and Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate, I felt she did a really good job as playing Sharon Tate. She was phenomenal as Sharon Tate. So there's I think this is one of, if not the perfect movie of 2019. There is absolutely no problems I really have with this movie. Like, there was nothing else to say. Like, I wonder why they had that. I was like, no, this entire movie makes sense to me. It does. And I loved it. So, if you haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, do yourselves a favor and watch it. It's a pretty good movie. So now, at number 3. So, there's a lot of this decade for animated movies has been, for me, one of the weakest decades for animation. Just a whole bunch of shit. I mean, the animation in this decade is pretty good. It's been good, it's been getting better, but a lot of animated movies, it's like, oh, there's depending on the animation to carry the movie, rather than trying to focus on, let's say, the humor or character development or any other thing, any other characteristic in writing. And that's why there's no better movie than Missing Link.
Need someone who knows the wild places of the world, and you're the world's greatest adventurer.
Laika, whoever, I don't know the guy who owns Laika, whoever does is a genius. I mean, so far, they have not put out a single bad, horrible movie. Like, I mean, they only have a few movies in their catalog. I think there's only 5 movies in their catalog. Coraline, Paranorman, Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, and now Missing Link. So far, they are really good with just making entertaining and funny movies. Missing Link being one of those movies. I said there'd be a comedy in this list that I think was funnier than Knives Out, and I think it would be Missing Link. This movie, it's dry, sarcastic humor. It got me. Like, in the theater, it got me. It got me a lot of times. It's just a funny movie. It's a funny movie, but not just that. It's a fun movie, and it's a cool movie to look at. Especially because it's stop motion. Or should I say it's claymation. And because it's claymation, it's actually really impressive. So, this was generally one of the best movies I've seen this year. This was one of the funniest movies I've seen this year. Hell, it's one of the most rewatchable movies I've seen this year. This is just a really funny movie. This is a movie that families should be watching. Not Frozen 2. Because this is actually funny. And the humor is actually clever. And the writing's smart. So, and the animation's actually pretty good. And this is a movie for families. Not just purely for children and that's it. This is a generally good movie. And if it weren't for the last 2 movies on this list, I wouldn't have a problem putting the Missing Link at number 1. this movie is generally good, but we got two more movies I felt were a little better, so let's get to them. So coming in at number 2, speaking of upcoming horror directors, I want to talk about Midsommar.
What time is it?
9 p.m.
That can't be right. The sky is blue.
This is what 9 p.m. is like here.
How long have you two been together?
Just over 3.5 years.
4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think? It's like another world.
This is a movie that I actually really loved. The first time I saw it, I was a little iffy on it. I mean, I liked it. Don't get me wrong, I liked it, but I was like, is this really the movie I was hoping for? Because when I got the few trailers they released for this movie, I had high expectations because Ari Aster, he wowed me with last year's Hereditary. So I was hoping, is this really the movie that I'm hoping for? And guess what? The first time, it didn't really meet my expectations. The first time I watched this movie. The second time I watched this movie, because I watched it a second time, obviously. Oh, it met my expectations. And I think it blew them out over the roof, mostly. This is a really cool movie. This is actually just a really cool movie to watch. A24, man, A24. I gotta say, alongside Laika, A24 is one of my favorite filmmaking companies out there right now. And I'm actually pretty excited for whatever other horror movie they could be making right now, because this was a good movie. As a horror movie, it's suspenseful, it's creepy, but it's even good as a comedy. There's like this really darkly funny aspect to this movie, and even as a drama. Actually, I would say a dramedy, because I would say there's a lot of drama and humor thrown into this movie, and I say it works well together, at least. And and then we gotta talk about the horror aspect, because it is definitely a horror movie. It has a very Texas Chainsaw Massacre feel to it, like the feeling of this group of people kind of experiencing this like primitive culture that they have no idea about. Like, they're not used to it at all, and it's very shocking and weird, but it's their culture. And even if it's messed up and twisted, it's still their culture. So it had a very interesting aspect to that. And I like that, because in the movie, or in the trailers, sorry, not the movie, but in the trailers, it made it seem like the cult were going to be the bad guys. And even though I dig a good Wicker Man-esque movie where the cult is the bad guy, or are the villains, I definitely do dig a good folk horror movie where the cult is the antagonist of the film. But, spoiler alert, the cult in this movie, they're not the antagonists. They're actually the good guys. And most of the teenage victims are the actual antagonists of this movie. And I really like that aspect to this movie. And this movie, it's actually really cool, because a lot of the intense horror stuff that happens in the movie happens in pure daylight. And that kind of just messes with your head, because it's just like, oh my god, this is actually happening in pure daylight. Like, it's not nighttime like in a lot of horror movies where people would just die and it has to be nighttime. It's not that. This movie is happening in pure daylight outside. This entire movie mostly takes place outside, and it's a really cool looking movie. The soundtrack is really, really cool. Alright, and for my number one pick for my favorite movie of 2019, Jordan Peele's Us.
Crazy! We can get crazy!
What are you people?
This movie. So I was already excited for this movie because, like many horror fans, I really dug the hell out of Get Out. I feel like that was just a really genuinely funny, scary, and clever horror movie. But this movie, my expectations for this movie were high, just like with Midsommar. But unlike Midsommar, right from the start of this movie, my expectations were blown away. This, to me at least, is my favorite movie of the year. This is the movie, when I think of 2019, I'm gonna think of this movie, because this is the movie that made this year for me. Out of everything I saw this year, out of everything that I listed in this video, this is the one that made 2019 for me. Now, 2019 for films is a pretty mediocre year, but I could say this, though 2019 did give me the movie Us, so I can't hate it that much. This movie cleverly combines everything I like about Jordan Peele and more. Social commentary, great writing, actually funny dialogue, and really intense, creepy situations, and pretty scary scenes and imagery. This movie gives me that. And honestly, Jordan Peele amped up everything I liked about Get Out and made this a really entertaining movie. This movie, I was so drawn into the world and the whole universe that this movie sets up. I was just drawn into, and there's like a sense of awe, and I could see all the creativity in this movie. I just liked it. I liked that there was this really bizarre yet really cool and funny horror movie, like out in, I want to say like mostly 90% of movie theaters in America had this movie, and I was just so happy to know that. And this movie, I can't get enough of this movie. Actually, because I just bought the Blu-ray and I actually rewatched this movie a whole bunch of times. I think I've seen it ever since I bought the Blu-ray. I think I've seen it about 4 times. This movie, I feel like it's gonna be my new Mad Max Fury Road, where this movie I will not get tired of. I could rewatch this movie again, and I will not be bored. I will not get tired of it. I will just be along for the ride. This is a genuinely good movie, and I gotta say, I really like Get Out, but I think I like this movie a little more. I like the ideas behind this movie just a little more. So, Jordan Peele's Us, a really, really good movie. And 2019, it's been a weak year. It's been a weak year for movies. 2010s in general have been an iffy year for movies. But there's been a lot of good movies. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of great movies that the 2010s have given at least me. But it's been an iffy year. So here's the hoping that 2020 is better. Alright, well, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys had a nice Christmas, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the year, and a Happy New Year's to all of you. And remember, hit that big red subscribe button if you want more videos like this. I also do vlogs, short films, etc. And if you want to be notified quickly about those upcoming videos, then hit that bell icon for notifications of all my future content. And also give this video a thumbs up. It not just encourages me to make more videos like this, but I mean, it also helps. It just helps in general. So make sure to do that, and I'll see you guys next time with a brand new video. Goodbye.